Good morning. I'm Angela Hughey. We've just ended the 7th week of the legislative session here with my dear friend and co-host Michael Soto. We are very excited to have a really thoughtful conversation today with Aliento Co-Founder and CEO Reyna Montoya and Local First Founder and CEO Kimber Lanning, and we're here to talk about HCR 2060. But before we get started, we realize that some of the folks that are tuning in may not know everything they should know about the two of you. So, Reyna, can you start us off by letting us know a little bit about your background and about what you do with Aliento?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for hosting me. My name is Reyna. I was born in Tijuana, Mexico, and migrated at the age of 10. So I've been living in Arizona for over 20 years now. So Mesa is home, what I call home. I grew up in a mixed immigration status family, so both of my parents were undocumented. Now, thankfully, they've been able to adjust their status, and they're in their way to becoming legal permanent residents. My brother is a DACA recipient. I'm a DACA recipient myself, and my little sister is a U.S. citizen. She's not so little anymore, though. She's a 16 rowdy teenager. So the work that we do at Aliento, it's really to transform trauma into hope and action with the immigrant community, and we do that in the intersections of education, mental health, and the arts through a systems and advocacy level.
Really important work.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, we're so glad you're here.
Yeah. And Kimber, can you share with us a little bit about you and Local First and the amazing work that y'all do?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I'm a small business owner. I had a small shop for 36 years now and an art gallery for about 25 years. And then I founded Local First Arizona 20 years ago. Yeah. And we quickly became the largest local business coalition in the country.
Wow.
So we represent a wide variety of small businesses really working to build a diverse and inclusive Arizona economy. Our theory is that entrepreneurship provides a pathway for families to build generational wealth, and we believe that everybody should have adequate access to the resources that they need to build a successful business. So everything we do is related to that theory, and we have a lot of examples of why it works, how it works. And people need to understand, as they spend their money, that is their power. Yeah. So the way you spend your money impacts the community that you have around you, creates opportunity or eliminates opportunities. So, we have lots of programs and events to engage all kinds of folks and get them active in building a better Arizona.
Amazing.
And we're proud Local First members and have been for years. And the coalition that is made up at Local First, 3,600 businesses?
We were at the height, and we're not that now. Coming out of COVID, we're smaller. I have to double check, but I think we're around a little over 2,000.
Wow.
Yeah. But still a really, really
Very
impressive
large,
membership. And, one community, we always say you vote with your wallet every day. So we absolutely understand what you're talking about. And,
right.
and I remember doing Shift the Way You Shop campaigns with you, and we were a little younger.
Yeah. It's been a journey.
It has been a journey. And remarkably, you still say yes to things, and so I'm grateful for that.
100%. I'm always in.
Well, speaking about always being in, we are having the two of you on the show today because we're really concerned about this HCR 2060. So, Reyna, can you kick us off and just talk about what is an HCR, right? And the pathway that this has, and then we can get into what this bill wants to do as well.
Yeah, so an HCR is a House concurrent resolution, meaning that it only has to have simple majority in the House. Then it would go to the Senate. It would have to pass. If it passes, would have to get a simple majority, and then the governor cannot engage. The governor doesn't have the power to veto it or to approve it. It would go to the voters. So technically, if things don't go the way we want and it passes in the Senate, voters are going to have to decide in the 2024 election.
And for folks that are tuning in that maybe don't pay that much attention to what's going on at the Capitol, Republicans have a one-seat majority in both the House and the Senate, right? And so it is passed in the House, right, by one vote?
It was 31-28,
okay,
so by 2 votes.
By 2 votes, okay. So passed in the House, and now it's on its way to the Senate. And if all Republicans vote for this, then this bypasses Governor Hobbs, and this is on the November ballot.
Correct. You got it.
I think something important to note, too, that's a little different about Arizona is that for most states that have this kind of legislative referral process to the ballot, it takes a 2/3 majority in either chamber to pass the the concurrent resolution. But unfortunately, in Arizona, it only takes a simple majority. And so, again, that means on party lines instead of having a 2/3 majority that shows a great deal of support for something.
And a willingness to bring
Yep.
folks from different political ideologies
Exactly.
together, right,
Yeah.
to move something to the ballot.
Right.
It's also important to note the cost
Yes.
of putting something like that on the ballot, right?
wildly
So
expensive.
it's wildly expensive. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're looking at about an average about $10 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which for this, the Arizona taxpayers are going to have to pay.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
so basically, the folks that are voting for this
Yep.
are handing Arizona residents,
A $10
million
bill at
bill?
minimum. Yeah. Yeah.
and there's two more of these too. There's another HCR, and then there's an SCR as well. So, so if all three of these make it to the ballot, you're talking about a tax of $30 million going to Arizona residents.
Yeah, to pay for these very
To pay for these
politically
vehicles, right.
motivated
On
bills. Yeah.
on top of
Right.
what's going to happen to small business owners.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Well, I'm just saying we're paying for this, number one,
Sure.
and then it's the harm that this HCR can do
Sure.
is obviously the main concern that we have.
Reyna, did you have something to add on the cost?
Yeah, I think that from a cost perspective, it's what it takes to run the campaigns, right? In
Yeah.
order to be able to decide either a no or a yes. So I
Yep.
think that that's something to think through that, because typically when we think about a healthy democracy, we think about it doesn't cost money. You would just have to go to the ballot and utilize your voice. But the reality is that there's paid opposition, that it's going to be organizing against this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does this HCR 2060 want to do?
So technically, it's gonna destroy small businesses, and it's gonna really create the administrative burden on small businesses. It would categorize them that if they're hiring any type of contractors or subcontractors, they're gonna have to become immigration agents and be verifying, utilize the system called E-Verify to ensure that they have a lawful presence to be in Arizona. The other thing that is really problematic as well is that any type of benefit above $500, this can be financial, but they're really defining benefit as something really broad. Anything can be from disabilities, from food, from going to the hospital. Now we're requiring them to utilize E-Verify to check their immigration status. So if I'm a pregnant woman and I need to go and give birth and going to the hospital, I'm not sure if they're going to have to put me on wait until the check E-Verified before they're able to give me any type of care.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
and what if you don't have the proper paperwork? Then does the hospital turn you away?
Well, the implementation, that's the big concern about this specific policy. There's not guidance. They're only saying that you can face, if you're not complying with this, a class 6 felony. So if you can think about it from a firefighter or from a nurse or from a doctor perspective, or
Right.
even law enforcement, right? Like if there's a car accident and then now out of the sudden a person is in critical condition, how are they going to check their immigration status? So either institutions are going to have to do two things:
Right.
check everybody and try to figure out a new system, or how are they going to determine, is it going to go back to SB 1070 times when if my last name is of a Hispanic sounding name, is that how they're going to be checking? So I think that's something that is really troublesome.
Well, also, what is the priority in that emergency situation, right?
The person's life, I would hope.
I would hope,
You would
right?
hope.
When you are calling a first responder of any kind, whether it's a police officer, a paramedic, a firefighter, if your home is burning down, the priority is not checking everyone's immigration status in the home. It's saving the lives of the people and trying to put out the fire, right? Like,
Literally.
Sure, and this is very real. We all remember the horrifying story just within the last probably 10 to 15 years of the young girl who had appendicitis. Her appendix burst in the hospital,
Yep.
and they refused service to her because of her status,
Yeah.
and she died right there.
Which is just horrific. I mean, in the transgender community, this happens to my community a lot too, right? Like, doctors will refuse to treat us in emergency rooms in terrifying situations, and people die, right? That's how Transgender Day of Remembrance started, is that first responders watched a transgender woman die after she had been attacked by an intimate partner. And, like, this should never happen, right? In an emergency room, by first responders, it should never happen. That should never... The first duty of care is to save the life of the human being in front of you, regardless of anything about that person's life, right? Save the human life.
Right.
And this bill would create a weird bureaucratic process that would put lives in jeopardy.
I also think it's important for every small business owner. It can be a small retail shop. I'll use an example. If you hired a plumber and you needed trenching out to the main line, and that plumber that you've hired as a contractor then hires a subcontractor to do the trenching,
Right.
and they just happen to send someone for that job that isn't properly documented, that business owner is now liable.
What?
And that's right.
Oh my
and
God.
And so what happens if they're liable? This is where the felony comes in?
correct, a class
What?
6 felony
No.
for, that's the way this is written. And I've had several people look at it, and we agree the way it is written, we are liable for contractors and subcontractors. So, and you have to keep
crazy.
records of every contractor and subcontractor you've hired for 3 years at all times.
Every contractor and subcontractor. I mean, that just like,
Right.
there's no way to do business at a certain point
right.
if that is the law, because
right.
then you're not just responsible for the contractor and the person you've hired. You're responsible for every single person that then that person hires and on down
Right.
the line.
That's remarkable.
That's
and
crazy.
the class 6 felony is a penalty that people do not realize it's for life.
Yeah.
The felony is going to impact you in so many ways. Your ability to rent, that felony is going to stick with you. It'll make it harder to get a job. There's
Or
a
to
million
get a small
ways.
business loan, right? Or
That's right.
any number of things
That's
if you're
right.
a small business owner. I mean, wow.
Does this come with jail time, this class 6 felony?
I don't know. I'm sure that's going to go on a case-by-case basis, but the financial penalties are really stiff.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah, you're gonna
this
have
will
to
put small
pay-
businesses out of business is what it'll
It
do.
I
would-
mean,
it
you're
would.
gonna have to pay about $10,000 per individual if you
Oh my
were to
gosh.
make a mistake. So you not only get the felony, but you get also a fee of up to $10,000.
So to go
Wow.
back to Kimber's example, I'm a small business. I hire a plumber. The plumber subcontracts. Somebody doesn't have the proper paperwork. I get fined $10,000 because I've hired this plumber. I get a class 6 felony. There could be jail time. We don't know. How are small businesses supposed to do business?
Well, I believe this will be debilitating. Now, I did speak with somebody who believes that the way the bill is written, that it says you must intentionally be avoiding E-Verify or disrupting E-Verify, but that's very subjective.
Yeah, how do you prove
How do you
intentional?
prove intentional
Yeah.
or not?
Right.
And that really opens a door for vendettas in my mind,
Yes.
or harsh penalties. It's just open to interpretation.
Right.
Right.
Which we're already seeing, again, with the trans community, how that's being weaponized actually against cisgender girls. So these bills in athletics and with all sorts of different things that have passed in K through 12 schools that try to sort of limit the participation of transgender kids. Now we're seeing parents and other girls on sports teams and even in Utah, a member of the State Board of Education accusing cisgender girls of being transgender to try to create, to essentially, have a modern witch hunt, basically, by saying, is this person really a girl or not? And so, again, it comes back to this very subjective, personal interpretation, and bad actors can, we can't control bad actors, right? And we can't control the way that other people interpret our intentions and actions.
Right.
And Michael, I think that the hard thing about this, and that many people are not talking about it, as you said, this bill harms children.
Yes.
And I feel that that's the main attack that maybe people are not seeing, that even with the transgender community, with the immigrant community, there's 1 in 9 children in Arizona, 1 in 9 that live in a mixed immigration status family like mine. So this is going to be potentially harming U.S. citizen children that were born here, that their only difference is that their parents are undocumented. Now you're preventing their parents to be self-reliant,
Yes.
being able to work,
Yes.
and being able to put a food in their table. And then now the kiddos, if you're a 5-year-old and you're being a kid playing in the ground, you break your elbow. Now you're going to have to go to the hospital. Parents are going to be mortified because that can mean that they're going to get deported.
Yeah.
And it can impact whole families in that way. The fear is so palpable within the immigrant community, but people forget that there harming U.S. citizens as well.
Absolutely, because I mean, a kiddo breaks their arm, right? If the choice is between the parents being deported and the kiddo getting treatment, we don't want to put any Arizona family
No,
in
that
that.
should never be a choice.
Right? That's not the right choice. That shouldn't be a choice. It should be you get the medical care for the kid and the family's safe, especially because we know that immigrants are a core part of our economy and always have been.
Well, and going to the core part of our economy, I mean, immigrants are, regardless of your documented status, or going to the grocery store and paying taxes and are
Yep.
employed, right? It's something like a little over 5% of employees, are immigrants that are undocumented in Arizona's current system. They're paying taxes, they're paying state taxes, they're paying federal taxes. We have a $1 billion budget deficit in the
Yeah.
state of Arizona, and so
Yeah.
we want to lose 5% of our workforce. We want to harm U.S. citizens who are children that live in a mixed status family. The burden to the small business community is remarkable. I mean, the damage that this HCR 2060 can do, I think, is, I remember SB 1070. I remember the national boycott. That was 2010, right? It's been 14 years since that, and it took us years to rebound from that national boycott. I don't know that the Arizona economy and that at this state can really have a sustainable future if this thing is passed.
Angela, we're talking about $228.5 million that we're going to be foregoing
Wow.
in state and local funding if we were
What?
to do something like this. Almost $230 million.
We can't afford that right
we
now.
can't afford that right now.
No.
We are constantly have shortage of workforce. Kimber can probably speak more around that. We're having a hard time. Why are we going to do policy that doesn't help Arizona?
This makes no sense. I mean, and we know, this, right now we're living in a weird political time where people are seeing not the economic argument and importance of everyone being able to work in a way that sustains our economy and our families. But we know from the past that this is not the precedent, right? President Reagan, President George Bush, many Republicans from the past have said, and many conservatives in the business community today will even say, look, what we actually want is a pathway for everyone that wants to live and work in this great state and country to be able to live and work in this great state and country.
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, so what's amazing to me, so there's the humanity
Yep.
of the bill, but there's just the straight economics, and that's what we're
Absolutely.
talking about. We have a ready and willing and currently employed workforce
Yes.
that we are actively trying to dislodge. And if they think that folks are just going to leave,
No.
this is not a solution. You're basically shifting the burden of immigration enforcement onto the backs of small business owners, and it's ineffective,
Yeah.
it's uninformed,
Yeah.
and it will fail.
It will.
It will
Absolutely.
fail, and you're going to end up putting some small business owners
Out of business.
out of business,
Yeah.
is what you're going to do.
Well, and can we just talk about the percentage of Arizona businesses that are small businesses right now?
Yeah, I know. I'm looking
You're
at
on
this.
it.
Kimber, this
Okay.
is from the Local First email that you sent out. Small businesses in Arizona employ 1.6 million of Arizona's 2.9 million employees.
That's right.
Wow.
There you go. So over half of Arizona's employees are employed in small businesses, and this will absolutely be just a remarkable burden to small businesses. And to your point, some small businesses, many I would imagine, won't survive. Right?
No, the burden is just too great.
No. Well, and even if we lost, I don't know, even a tenth of those small businesses and the number of people that are employed by those small businesses, that would just kill our economy. We would be, I can't even imagine that.
And for people who are very concerned about immigration, let's all be reminded we already have E-Verify.
We do.
The compliance on E-Verify is very high in the state of Arizona. What this bill does is drills in further than just your direct employees
Right.
to contractors and subcontractors,
Right.
which makes it nearly impossible to track
Yep.
without staff just paying attention to that component.
Right.
You have to keep your records for 3 years on contractors and subcontractors. So Why take something that's working fairly well right now
Yeah.
and try to up the level other than the fact that you're trying to play to the extreme right
Yep.
and you're going to end up damaging irreparably
Yeah.
Arizona's economy and our reputation.
Absolutely.
So this will make sure that we are not creating a sustainable pathway for all of Arizona. That's what I like.
Correct.
I mean, this is just everything about this is so mean-spirited, to your point, Kimber. But what this does is it negatively impacts every single person that lives in this great state, right? And it seems to me that this is irreparable harm. I don't know that we bounce back from this, right? Michael, you've talked about like some of these extreme bills being passed in other states and how people are fleeing those states, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We are seeing a trend throughout this country because we are seeing, unfortunately, the laws change throughout the country in over half the states for both the LGBTQ community and the immigrant community. And what we're seeing is that the loss of families and talent is just enormous because people are fleeing states that are passing these kinds of laws and going to states where they know that they can live, where they can work, where their kids can go to school or the emergency room, because that's critical for life, right? If you can't take your child to the emergency room, you're not going to stay in that state. And then what we're also seeing is that friends of that family, they're like, oh, I care about you. I don't want to live in this state anymore either. And they're leaving too, right? We're seeing just this enormous shift in population. That's going to have a massive impact on every state that passes these kinds of very draconian laws that are unenforceable, that are just going to ruin the economies of these states. It's also going to, they're going to lose the best and brightest in those states as well.
And that word, unenforceable,
Yeah.
has got to be front and center.
It does.
The layers, the way it's written,
Yep.
the vagaries, it really, I mean, as a small business owner, I would feel vulnerable. I mean, the example that I gave about the plumber then in turn hiring a trenching company, and I'm liable for that. And it's open to interpretation. While this bill, not a law, this bill does say you have to intentionally not be using E-Verify. That is really open to interpretation. How are they going to prove that?
Right.
And so, in addition to the $10 million it's going to take to go to the ballot, we're talking the cost of enforcement on something like this, the cost and loss of workforce, the cost of damage to small business owners trying to defend themselves, on and on and on. The vagaries, it's very dangerous when you put a bill forward that is simply unenforceable, and you get layers and layers and layers of complexity that just mire the whole system.
Exactly.
What we should be focused on is how do we get everybody to work?
Exactly. How do we get everybody that can work and wants to work so that our state is more successful, our economy is successful, everyone here is thriving.
Right.
And this
And the
bill doesn't do
interesting
that.
part about Arizona, Michael, to your point, is like we don't have to imagine what it's going to look like if something like this were to happen. We
already know.
We already know.
Yeah.
So why, after over a decade of really trying to work on the branding and the restoring relationships between Sonora and Arizona, who are our number one
They're our
leading
neighbors.
partner, right?
Yeah.
From an economic perspective,
Yeah.
it's just unfathomable.
It is.
It is not good for our state, for our economy, for our reputation. I mean, we made international headlines around the work, and we have seen that people will leave, and the only ones that are going to be in harm, it's going to be Arizonans.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and then let's talk about the big game too, right? Because I mean, we're host of the Super Bowl. We've got the WNBA All-Star Game coming. Before that, we have the men's NCAA Final Four. I mean, Arizona is host to the big game, and those big games literally bring hundreds of millions of dollars. I think the Super Bowl, the bottom line for what the economic impact was 1.2 or 1.4 billion dollars, right, with the B, right? So we love hosting these big games. I just went to the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, and let me tell you, nobody does it better than the great state of Arizona. But we will get out of rotation for these opportunities, right? And again, this and the amount of small businesses that are minority owned, that are LGBTQ owned, that are women owned, that are suppliers and vendors for these big games. games. I mean, and you know, you can get contracts that can absolutely change the trajectory for your small business, right? So the harm that this is going to do economically, the harm that this will do to mixed immigration families, which I'm just listening to you, Reyna, and my heart hurts as you're describing, you know, what a family could likely go through with this. Kimber, you know, Class 6 felonies, we're small business owners, and I don't have a spot, you know, to bring someone in just to run E-Verify to make sure that we're compliant. Plus, what does this do to the relationship with like Arizonans and government, right? And the lack of trust there, right? Like it doesn't feel like we're all swimming in the same direction in any way, shape or form towards a better, more sustainable Arizona. It feels like all of a sudden we're the enemy, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think
we're
that's
guilty before, you know, and we have to prove our innocence.
right, exactly, which is not how the American justice system works. And I mean, the role of government in a free society like ours should be to facilitate the success of the people, right? To facilitate a successful environment for businesses, for families, right? That's the role of government, right?
Yeah.
To create policy that actually makes doing all of the things that make this country great possible. And this is not an example of that. This is actually an example of government saying, we're coming after you and we're going to make it harder, not only for you to do something like go to the hospital, but we're going to make it harder for you to do business every day, right? Because, I mean, back to Kimber's point of what is intention, like, you could run as a small business owner E-Verify for every person that you hire directly, but then if you don't insist on that process for every single subcontractor of a subcontractor, is that intention, right? And
Sure.
then, I mean, who knows? Like, that's, it's just, yeah.
And for the record, if you're undocumented, you already do not qualify for public welfare.
Exactly. You don't.
So it's just creating these things more broader, more confusing, where lives would be at stake and at danger because they're adding this word benefit. So does that mean that if I'm a school providing college and career pathways, do I have to check every single immigration status of a parent who's trying to get their kiddos to school?
Wow.
We don't know. That's how broad this policy is.
Wow. This, I mean, I didn't think I had heard of a law that was more unenforceable than transgender bathroom bans, but I think this fits. This feels even more unenforceable than transgender bathroom bans, which are ridiculous because you would literally have to pay someone to stand at every bathroom and do like a genital inspection. So this is even less
That's
enforceable
SCR
than that.
1013,
Yeah,
by the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's bills that are passing all over this country, which is creepy and awful. I don't want anybody to have that job, and would be afraid of people that want that job, quite frankly. But I mean, this is even more unenforceable than that, right?
Yeah, it is. It's unenforceable. It has a hefty price tag.
Yeah.
And just the burden. You know, I mean, I have put a lot of time and effort into eliminating the Class 6 felony because these are nonviolent offenders.
Yep.
This is just a bad way to go. It is a lifelong mark that you don't recover from.
It also means you can't vote anymore,
Right.
right? Like, I mean,
That's exactly right.
This has so many horrible consequences that are not justified, right? Like you said, this is not a violent crime. This is hiring folks to get business done as efficiently and quickly as possible.
And with the addition of subs, you may not have even hired them.
Right.
When you talk about a
Exactly.
subcontractor, you are once removed from that hire.
Yep. Yeah, you have hired someone that whoever they hire, right? I mean, wow.
But also, we shouldn't be responsible for immigration enforcement.
Absolutely
No,
not.
no.
I mean, this can also cost a lot of Arizona taxpayers money because the way that it's written, there are problems around preemption because immigration is a federal thing that it should be under federal law. So then it can vex the questions around how much money we can even be wasting. I mean, we saw it with Sheriff Arpaio. We saw it how many lawsuits Arizona taxpayers had to be responsible for because people don't know how to enforce these laws because they're not really being in a way constructed that is practical and that is helpful.
Yep. That's the problem with ideological crafted bills, right?
That's exactly right.
They're not crafted to actually be mechanisms of governing and creating a more free and open society where we can all live and thrive. They're based on ideology, which is not factual, right? It's an idea and an opinion.
It's also not inclusive of law enforcement.
Exactly.
Why were they not at the table when this bill was crafted? Because they will
question.
tell you, We can't enforce that, and the burden of our correction system in Arizona, which is already drowning,
Yes.
is just monstrous. It's a viewpoint that would be essential
Oh,
for
yeah.
coming up with a bill like this.
Well, and firefighters and paramedics. I mean,
course.
we already ask all of these first responders to be what they do primarily in their job, and then to be mental health counselors and to be, crisis line folks. I mean, we ask them to do so much already
Right.
that is outside of their job description. Now we're adding immigration agent, right? And it's just like, this is not how this works. You
No.
cannot task people in these absolutely critical roles with all of these other things. Like, that's not, you're going to create a system where people's lives are lost because of it, quite honestly.
Well, and I go to Reyna talking about trauma at
Yes,
the very beginning, right?
absolutely.
And I think what this will do is create a traumatized Arizona overall to mixed immigration status families, to first responders,
Yeah.
to police and law enforcement, to small business owners.
Yeah.
There's nothing good about this. It's not enforceable. It costs us a lot of money. We, again, are running at a budget deficit, and this is what our lawmakers are coming up with, right, is a way to burden Arizonans more. So super concerning. Before we wrap up, anything you want to add? What can people do to get involved and let their voice be heard? How can they learn more about Aliento and Local First? Take it away.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many ways that you can still get engaged. There are mechanisms within our Arizona State Legislature where you can do an RTS system. You don't have to learn all of that. You can come to our website. The link is going to be provided. So then you can learn more about HCR 2060 and you can learn how to become an advocate. So make sure you check us out or follow us on social media at Aliento AC.
Yes.
So the RTS process that Reyna just mentioned is the request to vote, request to speak, and you need to go to the state capitol to create the account. But once you have the account, you can always just do it from home. And it's really important to weigh in, use your voice on issues that will directly impact you. It's so imperative that we don't sit at home and think that somebody else is going to take care of this.
Yeah.
This
This
is
is
your
our
life,
problem. Yeah.
and this is real, and it's happening right now.
Yep.
So our request to our coalition of small business owners is to send them back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
This is not a solution, and we are not here to bear the burden of immigration enforcement. We are already complying with E-Verify. We already have systems in place for this, but to add contractors and subcontractors to this is unenforceable, and it's expensive, and to attach a Class 6 felony to this is outrageous.
It is.
So we want people to get involved. At localfirstaz.com, we have information, and you can also join us. And we have what we call a fast responders list, where we send out an email notification to, if you're a small business owner and you're thinking, I would like to be involved, you'll get one email from us that tells you exactly which senators are most likely or you should be contacting with their contact information, talking points, everything all in one place. So we do our best to make it easy for small business owners because we know you're very busy.
Yeah.
So from our standpoint, we'll send this out to our constituents, and if you want to share the information that you're sending out, we're happy to put it in an e-blast that goes to one community members throughout the state as well, and
Great.
let us know ways that we can be helpful because we are better together, which is what we named the show, and we're all in this together as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
both.
you.
So much.
Thank you.